All right, today we're going to dive into this incredible story about the search for meaning in our very, very strange modern world. We're going to be pulling from some of the most profound and honestly sometimes hilarious conversations out there to tackle two of the biggest questions you can ask. What is evil, really? And where in the world do we find God? So where does this whole thing kick off? Well, it starts in a pretty perfect way, actually. Episode 6066 of the Duncan Trussell Family Hour podcast. And the guest, none other than Joe Rogan. Right off the bat, you just know this is not going to be your average chat. The stage is set for something a little diabolical. And look, they do not waste a single second. This is the question Joe Rogan lobs at Duncan right out of the gate. And it's the question that really frames this whole first part of our journey. Is Satan real? The answer they start to unpack is way more interesting and frankly more unsettling than a simple yes or no. Okay, so let's get into our first section here. To even begin to look for the divine, we first have to get a handle on the demonic. Not the cartoon version with the pitchfork, but the kind of evil that's lurking around in the 21st century. The very first thing they do is just tear down this Slayer version of the devil. You know, the guy with horns, raining blood, the whole shebang. Instead, they bring up this amazing idea from C.S. Lewis about the banality of evil. The idea that the real devil isn't some terrifying mastermind of pure evil, but something way more boring, almost bureaucratic. Rogan argues that this modern evil, which he calls child sacrifice, doesn't happen because of one single villain laughing maniacally in a boardroom. No, it's diffused. It happens through 1,000 tiny, detached decisions made by a bunch of different people in a really complex system, where no one person ever has to feel responsible for the final, awful result. But here's where it gets really interesting. You look at the original meaning of the word itself. Satan doesn't mean Lord of Hell. In Hebrew, it means the accuser or the adversary. And that changes everything. It's not a physical monster. It's a psychological force, something that twists reality. So, how does this accuser actually work? Well, it takes a complicated human being, or even a whole group of people, and it just slaps a simple, hateful label on them, like Nazi. And the second you do that, you've short-circuited compassion. You've made it easy. You've even made it feel righteous to commit horrible acts of violence against them. Okay, so if evil is this, boring, diffuse, bureaucratic thing, where do we find its opposite? Where do we find the transcendent? And that brings us to the second part of our story, the modern search for God, which often involves a chemical shortcut. And this is where we meet Dakota Went, who's kind of like a modern-day spiritual explorer. He travels to Varanasi, India, which is one of the holiest, most intense places on the entire planet. But his pilgrimage has a little twist. He's brought 5-MeO-DMT, the spirit molecule, to share with the holy men, the sadhus who live there. So what's the goal here? What's the promise of a substance like DMT? Well, as the great Terence McKenna put it, it's about getting access to a transcendental realm beyond language, an experience so powerful it just shatters your normal view of reality. And you gotta hear what these sadhus saw. It is absolutely wild. In just a few minutes, they're describing a fully generated Mahavishnu, a major Hindu god. Another one reports that Jesus came into my body. It's this insane cross-cultural explosion of divinity, all sparked by this one chemical. But just when you think this is all about cosmic visions and divine white light, the story takes this sharp, unexpected turn. The climax isn't some grand, unified vision of God. Nope, it's a single, devastatingly simple question from a wise old sadhu. So, picture this. A sadhu named Bhavani, a man Dakota knows well, takes a huge dose. He doesn't flip out. He doesn't even move. He just sits there perfectly still for 5 minutes, taking in this entire cosmic download. And then he opens his eyes, leans right into Dakota, and asks him, "Are you happy now?" Just boom, 4 words. And with that one question, he completely flips the entire script. It's the ultimate guru burn. He yanks the focus away from the spectacular light show and puts it right back on the person looking for it, basically asking, was this about enlightenment, or were you just looking for a fun ride? Bhavani then breaks it down even further. He calls the drug sapo, which is Spanish for toad. It gives you a 10-minute light. It's beautiful, but it's temporary. A sadhu, a holy man on the other hand, is light forever. One is a fleeting experience you can buy. The other is a permanent state of being that you have to earn. And Duncan Trussell just nails this with the perfect analogy. He says the psychedelic experience, as beautiful as it is, doesn't actually set you free. It's like you've hired someone to paint an incredible mural on the walls of your prison cell. It's gorgeous, sure. It might even make you forget you're in prison for a little while, but you're still in prison. So, okay, if the chemical shortcut, the 10-minute light, isn't the real answer, then what is? Well, that leads us to our next part, and a really powerful metaphor about the value of the journey itself. Dakota tells this story about a pilgrimage he took with Bhavani to a remote temple. It was an absolutely miserable 15-hour hike uphill in the pouring rain. And all his inner demons, all his complaints, his doubts, what am I even doing here? It all just came pouring out. Meanwhile, a friend of his just took a helicopter to the top. And here is the whole point. Yeah, they both ended up at the same temple. But the friend in the helicopter, he missed everything. The struggle, the exhaustion, the purging of all that negativity on that long, miserable hike. That was the pilgrimage. The process is what creates the meaning, not just getting to the finish line. And this all brings us to the final and maybe the most beautiful realization in this entire quest. It's the idea that the sacred isn't out there somewhere you have to hike or fly to. The real journey, it turns out, is the one that leads you back home. Bhavani offers this incredibly profound piece of wisdom. He tells Dakota that his true spiritual work isn't in some exotic adventure in India. It's in the most fundamental place of all, his relationship with his own mother. The sacred isn't somewhere else. It's right there at the very source of your life. Duncan Trussell echoes this exact idea with a teaching from his own meditation teacher. Everything's a temple. That messy sandwich shop, the chaotic airport, all the imperfect parts of our lives, that is the holy ground. We keep looking for an escape, but the sacred is already right here, all around us. This leads to the ultimate paradox, the final mind-bender, captured in this classic Buddhist story. A student is yelling across a river to his teacher, "Hey, how do I get to the other side?" And the teacher just yells back, "You are on the other side." The entire spiritual quest is based on this illusion that we aren't already where we need to be. And really, that's the question we want to leave you with. This whole journey, from redefining Satan in a corporate spreadsheet to finding God in a phone call to your mom, it all points to one thing. Maybe the great search for meaning isn't about finding some new exotic destination. Maybe it's about finally arriving right where you already are. And if you're already there, what river are you even trying to cross?